Yeah, for how many years now? 3, 4 years?
18, whenever that. Oh no, 17. 17 is when I started.
3, 4 years.
Yeah.
I kind of got into it in the mid-2000s, so probably 16, 17 years. And the one thing that's hilarious about media, and I think R.J. Young agree with me from Fox Sports. He's host of the #1 ranked show. R.J., you've written so many articles, done so many shows, both television and radio and podcasts. I have found this to be true in my life. You may well, second this. Is those most memorable moments weren't like, oh, man, that was a great point. Oh, I was really proud of that article. You share some family story. You share some secret. You share something like Ben Hartsock did to start our show today, RJ, where yesterday he experienced Buc-ee's for the first time in his life. And our phone lines were just jam-packed full. I don't know if people are going to remember what we said yesterday, but I guarantee you come fall football season, people will be on the road traveling, and they're going to remember these phone calls about Buc-ee's. Ben called it a fuel megaplex. Are you familiar with the Buc-ee's at all? You have any background experience in your life with this place?
Oh, Brock. Now you're talking my language. We're in my wheelhouse. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, brother. And that means that I get to go to Big 12 Media Days. Matter of fact, next week, I'm excited about it. And not just because, we're going to get the storylines, going to get some preseason conversation, get to go to Dallas, spend a few days. It's because I get to go through Melissa, Texas. And what's in Melissa, Texas but a Buc-ee's? I have 3 Buc-ee's shirts here at the house, okay? I will wear them proudly. And Ben, I'm proud of you. You are a real American today as you have experienced Buc-ee's. And my goodness, how did you not buy all the food and try all the fountains? I mean, you could spend quite literally a week at Buc-ee's and still have a good time. Yes, I'm very familiar with it. And to your point, Brock, it's always the stuff that you and I aren't really thinking is important, right? It's the mundane of the world. And yet somebody figures out that Ben Harstock has been to a Buc-ee's, and all of a sudden he's relatable, right? That's a guy I can get along with now because he likes the things that I like.
Maybe that's what you need, Brock, to become more approachable is wear some Buc-ee's gear. Most people are super intimidated by you.
You know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen next week? Number one, I'm going to get to meet RJ. I don't know if we've met officially. I'm going to get to meet because I'm going to be at Big 12 Media Days in Texas too, RJ.
That's my
and
name.
Now, how close are we to that? You said Melissa, Texas?
That's right.
Big 12 okay, I'm gonna get in my car. So, gosh, I get to see Iowa 80 on Thursday. Buc-ee's next week.
Ooh, side by side, like soon after comparison is really good.
So, RJ, would you recommend at Big 12 Media Days I pull up in a Buc-ee's T-shirt? Would that be a big deal?
I think it would. I think you would be a very popular guy, and not for being Brock Heward.
Okay.
It would definitely be for being like, oh, so is this your first experience at Buc-ee's? And the other thing to keep in mind here, Brock, is they're spread out, right? They're not close by, right? Like the local convenience store here is Quick Trip. So you see those, as much as you might see Come and Go, Casey's, whatnot. But to get to a Buc-ee's is an event, right? Because it has to be on your trip to somewhere else. And I think that's part of the brilliance of the experience is it feels like it comes out of nowhere.
What is your iconic, is there a signature, hey, you've got to get when you go to a Buc-ee's? Do you go with the beaver nuggets? Do you go with the fresh fudge? Are you getting deer feeder corn? I mean, I know they've got it all.
Man, I'm here for the candied pecans, okay? I will stop there, get those candy roasted pecans, load up on about 2 dozen, right? So I can take them with me and eat them during Big 12 Media Days and on the road back. But the one thing that I could say that is great about Buc-ee's is my partner is bougie, right? She is not about country. She is not about Western. She is not about Texas in that way. And yet she goes into Buc-ee's with me. She says, okay, I get it. I understand. So if it can win her over, it can win over anybody.
Well, so I think I can segue what you and Brock were saying about you never know what someone is going to capture on with a story, a personal anecdote. Well, in the world of recruiting, I love talking to coaches and recruiters. They always say you never know what is going to close the deal. What's going to be? Is it going to be an experience with a coach? Is it going to be looking at a locker? Is it going to be trying on that uniform? Is it a suit that a coach wore? Is it a car that the coach drove? I've heard all stories. Well, we've got another example of a West Coast guy, this JT. Help me get his name. Tuimoloau?
Close. Tuimoloau.
JT Tuimoloau. Larry Johnson, yet again, the great recruiter, defensive line associate head coach at Ohio State, gets another super highly rated player to go from the West Coast to Columbus, Ohio with the Buckeyes.
100%. And I had said this is really would be a feather in the cap of the Pac-12. I mean, this guy comes out of Brock's neck of the woods over there in Sammamish, Washington, coming out of Eastside Catholic, and had basketball offers as well, 6'5", 280 pounds. He's one of those generational talents on the defensive line, and we've been paying such close attention to him because he's one of those kids that I wish would take more advantage of this, in that if you have this sort of leverage, use it. He did not have to sign a national letter of intent. And to get a little inside baseball, national letter of intent binds you to the school. A financial aid agreement binds the school to you. So you could sign as a player as many financial aid agreements as you want to ensure that you're going to have your scholarship when you arrive. You sign a national letter of intent, you are bound to that one school and you have to ask to be released from it. But all that to say, because that deadline came and went, he wanted to wait till he could take official visits, right? And the one thing to come out of this is not just that he got to go to Ohio State with his parents and take it in. It's that he canceled a visit to Alabama, right? That was the real news here. That was an official visit he could take in June. So he was down to 3 Pac-12 schools, including Washington, Oregon, and USC, and Ohio State. And in choosing Ohio State, yes, you have some outstanding players over there. I mean, they got, my goodness, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are going to be bookends for them for the next 3 years. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I really wanted to see Oregon or Washington come through here, if not USC, because USC gets the number one player in the 2021 class in Corey Foreman, and people forget that. But he's also a defensive lineman. So there were all sorts of ways in which JT Tuimoloau could make this into a real event for the Pac-12, and now he's on Ohio State's roster as Oregon travels to Columbus on September 11th. Either way, I'm excited. That's a game on our air at Fox. So I'm really interested in it, but now I feel even more so like Ohio State has a Ferrari, man. You just got to get a kid in there at quarterback that knows what to do. And Brock, you'd be the first person to say, man, it's difference between getting your driver's license and jumping into Ferrari as opposed to being a Formula One driver. And I feel like that's what they got at Ohio State.
No question. RJ Young from Fox Sports with us. You can follow him on Twitter at RJ_Young. He's host of the #1 ranked show. He's a national college football writer. You do a lot, and he loves Buc-ee's, just like Ben Hartsock, and maybe I will here in a couple of weeks as well. Yesterday, Yogi Roth was on our show, Pac-12 Network, smart guy, West Coast guy, USC guy, and I appreciated what he had to say, and I think it speaks a little bit to the talent that has left the West Coast. It is Bryce Young. It is Uyongale. It is now JT. It is Emeka, the receiver, Avoibu, who's now at Ohio State as well, from Tacoma, Washington, all of these. And Yogi said the first job of George Kliavkoff, the new commissioner, maybe not the first, but one of the most important jobs, is to rebrand that Pac-12, not as a conference of champions, because he ain't fooling anybody. He ain't fooling these kids the last 10, 11 years. There's been no champion. It's all been Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, so LSU. So instead of conference of champions, how about the conference of players? Player empowerment, name, image, likeness, West Coast resources, West Coast finances, the ability now to really empower the player on the West Coast. Is this a turn that George Kliavkoff can do from a branding standpoint to keep these kids at home?
It's a way to go, but I would disagree with Yogi on this one point, and I agree. He's phenomenal, and he's very articulate and thoughtful, particularly about quarterback play, and he was really helpful to me in understanding just what made Justin Fields great at Ohio State. But I would say, man, your first job is to fix your TV deal. And in that money will filter down. Like one of the things I keep telling people about, say, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Georgia, these places that recruit so well, Clemson, Ohio State, they do it by winning championships. The SEC is able to redistribute all this money that they then put back into recruiting. And becoming the conference of players, I think, works for you if you have the money to tell them what they're doing. Like, the way that I look at this is USC ought to be doing all sorts of numbers, and yet they aren't just yet. Now, I think they're getting there. I've been very bullish on the way they've been recruiting and rebranded themselves. So I would use them as an example if you're George and you wanted to follow Yogi's advice. But I would also really take a look at this from the standpoint of, man, what's going to make us competitive? Because if we're competitive, the kids will come to us. As a matter of fact, Miami is apparently entertaining an offer from an MMA company called American Top Team, right? They have a bunch of gyms across the country, and they want to sponsor every last one of their 90 scholarship or 85 scholarship players, right? I think that's a smart thing to do, and I think that's something that George could do very well with his background coming from MGM. I just think that if you're able to say we make a lot of money, you're also able to say you guys have a lot of money to spend and put back in your football programs, and then you can rebrand yourselves as the conference of players. But it's got to be with winning championships, man. I think when you talk about Tuimoloau, for instance, the way I look at it is they can put him in the first round of the NFL draft. They will play for conference championships. They will play for national championships. You don't need to rebrand if you're doing those things.
That is well said, RJ. I'm sorry, man. We're up against it. We could talk for a long, long time. Buc-ee seemed to kind of disrupt the show today, taking a bunch of time. But all that means is you're going to have to join us again. I'll see you at Big 12 Media Days, it sounds like, next week. And we will for sure have you on this show moving ahead. RJ, appreciate it, man.
100%. Thanks, Brock. Good to talk to you, Ben.
There he goes, RJ Young from Fox Sports. You can follow him.
RJ, you're the man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, brother. Bye.
Bye.